Grace will decide.
Sorry. Good evening, everyone. I'm having like some my computer's being slow. But thank you everyone for joining us tonight. My name is Sam, and on behalf of Book Scoop, I'd like to thank you all for joining us for tonight's event with Grace Perry in conversation with Tien Tran discussing the 2000s Made Me Gay essays on pop culture. We'll be hosting more virtual events in the near future, and you can learn more about them on our website by signing up for our email newsletter. You can follow us on our social media at Book Soup, and you can also follow our Crowdcast page right here. Our next event is this coming Monday with Terry Miles in conversation with Cory Doctorow discussing rabbits, and past events are also available on our YouTube channel. That event Monday is ticketed, by the way, if you are interested. So tonight's event will end with a Q&A, and to submit a question, please use the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen. If you see a question on the list you'd like for our speaker to answer, please click the like button. It'll bump it up in the queue, and we will try to answer as many questions as time will allow. And please also feel free to engage.
Did Sam freeze?
She froze for me. I don't know.
Okay, she froze for me too. Oh
no. In the chat area. Sing a copy of... Oh, did I freeze?
You froze a little bit, but now you're back.
I'm back. Okay. So please support Book Soup and our author tonight by purchasing a copy of tonight's featured book, which you can do by clicking the green button right below the viewer screen. That'll redirect you to our website, and we have signed copies from Grace, so I'm pretty sure you can only get those at Book Soup for now. So you should get them here if you haven't gotten your copy already. And we're also open for in-store browsing. So if you are local to Los Angeles, please come say hi to Book Soup 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily. And since I'm freezing, I will get to it. I'm going to introduce our guest for this evening. Grace Perry's work has been published in a variety of outlets, including The New Yorker, New York Magazine's The Cut, BuzzFeed, Outside, and Eater. She is also a longtime regular contributor to The Onion and the feminist satire site Reductress. Most of her work, comedy and journalism alike, interrogates the intersection of queerness, pop culture, and the internet. She lives in Los Angeles. And our in-conversation guest tonight, Tien Tran, is an LA-based comedian, actor, and writer. Her stand-up has been featured on Comedy Central's Taking the Stage and at the Just for Laughs Festival in Montreal as part of the 2019 New Faces of Comedy Showcase. She's a writer on Showtime's Work in Progress and is a co-host of Crooked Media's Hysteria podcast. And you can find her on Instagram at HankTina. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the camera over to Grace and Tien. And the green room was a joy, so I know you're in for a wonderful event. Thank you both so much for being with us. And sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Hi, Grace.
Hi, I'm so excited to be joined in conversation.
I'm so excited.
Tien Tran.
No, the famous Grace Perry. First, shout out to Book Soup and Sam. Thank you so much. I never know what to do when people read bios when we're on screen. I was just like,
you're like, yes, it's me. I wonder if I don't know if anyone's looking at me while this is happening. While somebody is just like reading my resume. Yeah, here we are.
Grace, I'm so excited because we are here. Sorry to nerd out. I did the Post-its. I did the Post-its.
You're such a good student.
Because I was so excited. Sam is so sweet. It's just as weird to read them. I promise. You did a great job, Sam. Sam, you did a wonderful job.
It's not on you, Sam.
It was not on you. It's totally on me. It's totally on me. 2000's made me gay. Essays on pop culture. I just want to say that reading this made me feel like the best queer, like best friend that I wish I had, or like the queer community that I wish I had. Like you were reading this made me feel like, oh my God, I finally have like the best friend growing up that I wanted.
Oh my
like
God, this is so good. I love it.
It's really, really true in like middle school, high school, and beyond. Like everything you're talking about really, really touched me.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Thank you so much for writing it. Like just from the jump, like if for our people who haven't gotten yet lucky enough to get their hands on it, tell us a little bit about like how you were inspired or what inspired you to write 2000's Made Me Gay.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it all kind of came together like fairly easily. Like I think that these were a lot of thoughts and feelings that I had about various like pieces of entertainment from the 2000's that I've kind of been kicking around for a while. were the actual idea to start so I kind of been thinking about it. I joked about this, but I was like, oh, that could be like a podcast where we like talk about like the things that made us gay in the 2000s. But I started it as, which would be very fun, and we should do that podcast.
Okay. And if you're looking for a co-host, I would be down. I'm pitching myself right now.
But basically, I started the first essay that's in the book that I wrote was the Katy Perry one about I Kissed a Girl, and I wrote that in 2018 it was like I was thinking about pitching it as like a 10-year retrospective, like after the song came out, and either I didn't pitch it or it didn't get picked up or something, but like that, it didn't run anywhere. And
okay, their loss.
Okay, their loss. But I was then kind of like, oh, I can do this with a lot of different pieces of pop culture. Like I can take something that I was really into as a teenager and be like, why was I so into this? And how did this kind of shape the person I am today? And like, a lot of that stuff obviously comes back to like queerness, and because I think it's just like, you know, when you're a teenager, you're so spongy, you're like you're doing things, and all the time you're looking for cues on like what kind of person to be and how to be that person. And so I think that there's just like there's a lot to mine there, you know, and ultimately kind of coming up with the list of the, you know, of the pieces of the show's TV, et cetera, that I actually wrote about was like pretty easy, because like the basis of it was just like, what did I like as a teenager? And then so yeah, that's the origin story.
What's so wonderful about your book too is that you say there is such a lack of queer representation for us. Like I was born in 87, so I'm just 2 years older than you, and like, what'd you say?
So like same age, yeah.
Same age. We're totally same age. Like for those of you who picked this up, like Grace is touching on the challenge before it was the challenge, and like Harry Potter and all of like the OC and Mean Girls, and like it's so wonderful to see you talk about these things as being, there's like queer nuggets in there.
Yeah.
And like how did you like, oh God, now I'm getting like too excited about which question I'm going to ask. But
overheating.
I know I'm just overheating with it, but just like, you know, how did you mind, like, did you look back at G chats? Like so many of your things are like diving back into your teen years. Like, did you look back at G chats and emails?
I definitely, especially for like college age stuff, because there was so much of my social life happened over GChat for like, you know, from 2008.
I can't believe you kept all of that. I've deleted all my like.
I didn't even know you could delete it. Like they're just all like in there. I don't know. I just was like, I wonder if these are, you know what? Actually, I had a different email address too. So it was easy to go through. I changed my email address when I graduated. But so I went back in that and found a ton of like conversations and stuff. And, you know, like, I think particularly like there's one essay where I'm talking about like, you know, my first girlfriend in college, and like so much of that relationship was born over GChat. And so it was a wild and emotional process to like go back and be like, oh, I like, and it's weird, like you can like recognize yourself in who was communicating them, but it's also like, oh, there's distance from it too, you know? So it's like if anyone is really looking to excavate their teenage or like youth selves, I recommend going back to your G chats because they are wild.
I know I've done that in the past with like ex-girlfriends and like reread things. And there is that like distance in that sense of, I still get a little tiny sense of dread of how naive I was.
Knowing how it ends usually, or whatever. Like you can be like, oh no, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't
stay. But like, you are so tender to your young self. Is that something that was right from the jump, or something that you had to kind of write towards? Because you know, in my experience of coming out, I remember being kind of hard on myself as a teenager now, but reading this, I'm like, oh, Grace is so tender and kind and like generous to her young self.
Yeah, I think I think by the time that I got to the point that I was like writing this book proposal and thinking about how like this as a collection, I had enough space from my teenage self and from like my coming out years that I could be more generous to myself, you know, that I could just be kinder. Yeah. And so I think a lot of that was time, but there's definitely like, I think this is true about the way we look back on pop culture, but also true on the way we look back at ourselves, is that I think it's really easy to like be a critic in hindsight and to be like, oh God, I was such a dumb bitch when I was 16. But like, yeah, you were 16. It's okay to be that person. Like we're always as old as we've ever been, right? Like we're always
like that.
At the age where we like think that we know everything, or that we're like, I've known more now or had more life experience than ever before. And like, you know, when you're a teenager, it's really hard to, you know, make decisions with only the limited life experience. So like, yeah, it's easy to look back and be like, God, I was so naive. I was whatever. But like, ultimately it's easy. You just kind of have to be kind to our closeted selves.
Yeah, I think it's such a misnomer too that like coming of age only happens when you're like that high school to college. I think we are like coming of age at every decade, truly.
Some might say that we're a work in progress.
Okay. You know? Some might say we are a work in progress. Nice shout out if you want some queer content.
No, I think you're totally right. I think that, you know, a lot of like the best thing about like the movies and books and TV shows that we consume are that like they allow us to access different parts of ourselves. Like you know, nobody is being their entire self at every time, because like you have a different version of yourself when you're in a job interview versus on a first date versus with your best friends. Like we shift modes a bit, right? And I think that, you know, there's a part of me that thinks that like we are always every version of ourselves we've ever been. It's just a matter of being able to like access that person. And I think that like what teen pop culture does is, and especially like watching it or consuming it as an adult, is it gets you back into that mindset. It makes you feel vulnerable. It makes you feel insecure. It makes you feel that like excitement of everything feeling very like new and frightening. And I think that's really what I was trying to access a lot in this book, you know, is kind of like shifting into that like teenage part of myself, and like also being kind to that person.
Which you do really beautifully, because there are so many moments of just like, you describe, you don't say it, but like there's so much queer longing. And I think there's a thing with lesbians and queer women that there's just like so much longing that you have to work through. And, you know, Grace writes about the OC being a cornerstone in that Seth Cohen is kind of your banter boy dating almost blueprint, so to speak.
Totally.
Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's this phenomenon that queer people are very familiar with, of like the do I want to be them or bang them thing, of like it's like a weird thing of like, oh, I'm attracted to you, but am I attracted to you as a friend or as like a creative partner or as a mentor, or like what is this like, or do I just want to bang you, and or am I like in love with you? Like there's so many different ways that we can be attracted to someone, right? And so I think that so that is like a very familiar thing. I think that like, you know, I have felt that way about a lot of women, and like I have dated people that I have then been like, oh, we should have just been friends, like, and I just mistook what my own feelings of attraction were. And you know, it takes time to really figure that out, but in this essay, I kind of flip that and look at the male characters of shows in the 2000s. So in particular, it's Seth Cohen, Jim Halpert, Christian from Moulin Rouge, and Dan Humphrey from Gossip Girl is one. And I mentioned Cliff from Bring It On, I think falls in there too, but I don't really get into him. But as this sort of archetype of, in high school when I was like closeted, I was like, ooh, these are the guys that I like have a crush on. And then in hindsight, I'm like, oh no, I actually just wanted to be them. Like I was, and so I think particularly Seth Cohen, I think is just such a great example because he really was like the best example of like a lesbian on TV. Seth Cohen is a lesbian. Like that's a tweet. Like that's not an idea. Like that's like a weird hippie like internet thing.
No, but it's so accurate though. Yeah. If anyone has seen the OC and who is now out, like Seth Cohen is lesbian canon.
Seth Cohen is lesbian canon, and like I am not like accepting him as a lesbian because like he is in fact a cis man, and like but like
oh my god, please don't cancel us that we said Seth Cohen is
like do not get it twisted, but I but yeah, like he's got the longing is like integral to this archetype of the banter boy, right? Of the like. They all have like these girls or women who they are so in love with, and like to the point that their obsession with this person like defines their personality. It's not just something that drives the plot, but like Seth Cohen being in love with Summer Roberts is who Seth Cohen is, you know? And that I think is something that is like very, I mean, of course, there's the lesbian longing thing, right? Or you just like, queer women are notoriously obsessive, and that is true, and that is a thing that happens. It's not everybody.
I think everyone is obsessive, but we just get painted to be. Because I feel like because our longing is so, we sit with it so much.
We're emotional. We can have like full relationships in our heads that like, yes, lots of people can, but for some reason it is something that has sort of coalesced around queer women in particular.
Yes.
But yeah, Seth really has that. And I also wonder, and I don't like quite get into this in the book, but I think there's also something to be said about like the person you're attracted to defining who you are also seems like a lesbian thing because of like lesbian aesthetics and like the butch spectrum. And like because I think that like when I've been like the way that I present and act and kind of like the different modes of like gender expression I've had have kind of depended on like the person that I'm with, or have kind of shifted with the person that I'm with. Like not that's nothing like crazy like reinventing myself, but like I think that I think that is something that also fits in. But I mean, the ideas in the book.
Well, you write about that in American Bitch, American Butch, of just like, which is one of the essays that Grace has about the pressure of trying to self-identify in that binary of the butch femme, which I also feel like, as I was reading it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is really speaking to me because I don't ever feel at home just picking one. Or being go ahead.
Yeah, even like the spectrum of like, which is like such a thing too, of like the like femme, hard femme, soft butch, like all that stuff. Even that, I'm just like, it goes back to what I was saying before about like we have so many different versions of ourselves. And I think that a lot of people like, especially with like butch women, I think that there's a lot of power in that terminology, and there's a lot of power that people get from those words and self-identifying that way. I think that seems to be particularly true with like people who are just coming out and sort of trying to like be like, yes, I am this kind of gay person. But it's just never something that's like really spoken to me in a meaningful way. And I am self-conscious that makes me like bad at being gay, but
you are not. You are great at being gay.
Thank you so
much. No, because I like there is so much power in identifying. Like I love that there is terminology that allows people to like find their power. But what I love about queerness and like just gender presentation is that we should be allowed to change. Like you should be allowed to find from day to day, I feel like if straight people really learned anything from us, it's like you can change whenever you want to, and things are going to be fine, you know?
It's going to be fine.
It's going to be fine.
Yeah. No, I think that there, like, a lot of my anxiety with that, and I talk about this in the essay, but like cropped up in the age of the personals Instagram page and everybody having their like Instagram that was like soft butch Taurus, like here to cuddle. Like it was all of these like really, I mean, I guess like, of course you can't change your zodiac sign, and that is who we are. And
you're absolutely right.
I want to respect that. But yeah, it was, I found it so strange that everybody included what their like lesbian aesthetic type was. And then I never ended up making a post, but when I tried to, I felt some pressure to like define that and was like, I don't feel connected to this. So
I spent so much time just looking through OkCupid and never making a profile. Like really, truly, I felt it was like in my bedroom, sad and single, just shopping online through OkCupid.
Window shopping.
But
you're
never
not taking out the credit card.
I know, but I never signed up for a credit card.
Yeah, no, you didn't.
What I love so much too about the 2000s made me gay. I'm just gonna keep saying it so you keep click down right here to buy a signed copy only at Book Soup. Is that the whole book is such an argument for how much pop culture really truly does affect how we shape ourselves, how the world is shaped, and how people respond to, you know, different stories, specifically queer stories. And because I still have people that will say things like TV's not important, or like jokes are harmless, or that sort of thing.
Right.
And so for you to, you know, I think this is just such a perfect example of how much pop culture truly has like incepted our brains.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like pretending otherwise is just irresponsible and like kind of obtuse. Like I don't think that like TV, like I don't think that like progressive TV shows are going to change the world. Like that's not like we need like good policy to do that. Like right, like I'm not like, you know, TV is the most important thing in the world, but like of course what like, you know, the entertainment and art and things that are kind of both that we consume, like of course that's gonna shape who we are. I mean, I think that there's this idea, and you know, I read about this in the introduction of the book, but like the idea that escapism is this thing when we're like watching like shitty TV. Like for me, for example, watching season 17 of Grey's Anatomy, where Meredith Grey
I just have to
where we were talking about this in the green room, but Meredith Grey, for those of you who aren't up on, I repeat, season 17 of Grey's Anatomy, it is the COVID season, and Meredith got COVID, obviously, and she has been in a coma for basically the entirety of the season. And Ellen Pompeo was getting paid $20 million a year.
It is genius.
I love it.
I love it. I love it so much. I really, until you told me that, I didn't know what my like final entertainment goal is. But now it's that. It's to be in a coma on TV.
People like interviews have been like, don't you wanna like what do you see for yourself after Grey's? Like what kind of work do you want to do? And she's like, I'm never working again. What are you talking about? Like, I made so much money doing this show. And I'm like, yeah, I have to respect that. Anyway,
good for her.
The point is, you know, when we're watching, like, we have this idea that when we're watching TV that, or you know, I think TV is probably the one that gets like blamed as like, you know, called fluff the most or most, like escapist. And sometimes that can be, you know, it can be like Game of Thrones or something, right? Like it can be something that's like super fantasy and like, of course it's not in this world, or it can just be like, you know, watching Real Housewives, like also feels escapist, but it's like technically still
to me does not feel that feels more fantasy than Game of Thrones.
I think you're right. But like, you know, there's this idea that it's like, oh, I'm just doing this and turning off my brain. But like, of course you're not turning off her brain. Like, this is a thing, like, you are literally sitting and doing a thing. You are sitting and watching TV. Like, sure, it's not as active as reading. It's not as active as like going for a walk or whatever, but like, you are still doing this, you're still engaging with this. So like, of course that stuff is going to seep into your brain, whether you like it or not. It's gonna, you know, I think in particular when you're a teenager, right? Like, and you're just, again, spongy, you can take more stuff in. So yeah.
Your explanation, and it's the first time I've ever come across this term, and it really, again, to talk about how pop culture and TV has just incepted our brains. But, you know, I also grew up Midwest, Erie, Pennsylvania, that counts, and Catholic as well. And I, in my high school, really thought that I was just waiting for the perfect man, and all these feelings that I was having is because I just hadn't found the right man yet. And you have such a great essay about Blair Waldorf and the like the idea of like, because it's so toxic, I think, to put this out to people that the only way to like lose your virginity is through like a perfect love only sort of sex education.
I think that is in that essay I write about these different models of losing your virginity that we saw in teen TV shows. So starting with Dawson's Creek, which that was like 2000 when, I mean, the show was on from like 98 to 2003, but I think it was like Joey and Pacey having this like perfect, magical, like they've been together for like a year. They're so in love. They've told each other all of their deep, dark secrets. And finally they have this super romantic time where they lose. Well, Joey had sex with the teacher, I think, or no, not Joey. Pacey had sex with the teacher, obviously.
Of course he did.
But Joey loses her virginity to Pacey. It's all very romantic. And then you see the same. And then with Mean Girls, they kind of, or not Mean Girls, with Gossip Girl, they like flip it on its head where it's like Blair is planning to lose her virginity to Nate in this very, you know, Dawson's Creek model, right? And then she gets pissed. I can't remember what happens, but she gets pissed at Nate one night and goes to this like burlesque club that Chuck Bass is her spot. And then she loses her virginity to Chuck Bass. And it's very like bad, but like sexy, and like it's the wrong way to do it, but like it's hot and like it's insane. And then with Glee, you see they go back to like the Dawson's Creek model basically but with their gay characters, right? So it's kind of, so it's fitting like Kurt and Blaine into that very like, we've been together for a really long time. We've told each other all of our deep dark secrets. We have blah 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 blah. And it's not that I don't. Of course, that is a great experience to have.
Yeah, ideal.
Having sex, like, of course that's ideal. But I think that the expectation that, like, the kind of the messaging that I got from that was like, you will only have sex with, you're only allowed to have sex with somebody who you are like fully in love with. It's this very like old school, like Catholic.
It is so old school Catholic.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's not exactly a progressive idea, but it also just like what you're really eliminating, like what you really should have with like, you know, kids should have, and anyone ideally should have with people that they're intimate with, is just somebody that they trust and somebody that they know, like knowing how to talk about consent, knowing how to talk about responsibility and protection and all of these things. And it doesn't have to be somebody you're in love with, because like as adults, you often don't sleep with people. And like that's just not the reality.
And I didn't know that when I was younger.
Until you read my book.
Until I read your book just now.
What? And that is something that we're okay with. And I am, and most people are, many people, I guess, you know, there are people out there who are not okay with that. But I think there's like responsibility to just tell kids like, these are these safe ways and the consensual ways to do this. And like love is not necessarily prerequisite. Also, like how many times are people in love and their partner treats them like shit, right? Like,
I know. Yeah.
It's love and like consent and safety actually don't have all that much to do with each other. On
like love does win, but not all the time.
But not, you know, it's Pride Month, but like, is it?
Is it? I wanted to bring up something that we had talked about a little bit before in the green room too, because I think it's a very important distinction is like, you know, it is a bit of the book itself is like not exactly a coming out, but you had phrased it as more of essays that were like kind of like different ways that you were kind of staying in the closet or being kept in the closet or like peeking out of the closet. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, that was something that I so we were talking about how in the green room, for the folks who weren't in the green room,
yes,
and Sam, we're talking about how sick of like coming out stories we are, and like seeing that on TV and in movies, and in the trope of the lesbian period drama, which we are all very familiar with.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for prefacing that. I should have. We were talking about Kate Winslet, Mayor of Easttown,
we were talking about Fossil movie, and then we were talking about like the trope of the lesbian period drama, which like again the internet has made every joke there is to make about it. I cannot contribute in that regard, but I think that like the reason that we keep seeing these lesbian period dramas is this idea from Hollywood, big Hollywood, from like studios and whoever's like putting this money forward and actually trying to sell a story, is that this idea that like the most interesting thing that queer people do is come out of the closet, and that like the tension between like, should I be with this person or not be this person, is like, again, it seems like it's the only thing that straight people find all that thing. And again, like that's why like Work in Progress, the show that Tien writes on, is so amazing, because it's like everyone is out, everyone is like, that is not like, no one's questioning their sexuality, but they still have so much to work out and so much to figure out. But yeah, so anyway, so in that context, we were talking about, and so I was like, oh my God, I'm so sick of coming out stories. And I was like, well, but then I just wrote a whole book about me coming out. But it really, it's less.
It's less that though.
I think that like, frankly, I have a very boring coming out story. Like on its face, like my coming out story is not something that's going to like drive a plot, right? Like of just like, just based on what happened. It was basically like, I was in high school. I felt bad about myself. I had like a best friend who I got too close with maybe.
Yeah.
And then I went to college, and then I watched TV, and then I came out. Like, it's I didn't go to conversion therapy. I didn't like, none of those like big dramatic things happened to me. So I think in order to kind of talk about that part in part of my life, which is of course really important to me, but like, again, on its face, not that interesting of a narrative. The way that I wanted to talk about it, or I found interesting to talk about it, was through like the minutia, and just like go really like personal with it, and go very like, let's talk about like the specific ways in which like I kept myself in the closet, and hoped that like talking about that in a detailed way that those that those details would draw, like people would relate to them, and that would draw more people in, or draw readers into that. So
I mean, 100%. I haven't heard Juicy Campus in so long. For those of you who don't know, Juicy Campus is a gossip message board that was very popular when we were in school. And looking back now, I'm like, I can't believe it even was allowed to exist. It's mean-spirited.
It's so mean. It's so mean. It's Reddit for like who did what at frat parties.
I know.
So bad.
It's like go ahead.
No, I was just saying it was very toxic, and I write about that, my experience putting my own name on it to out myself to my college community. That was something. Another thing that I was like so like cringe about for years, and then when it came down to actually writing this book, I was like, I gotta put the cringe stuff in here. Like, that's what's the people are gonna come here for the cringe. So
you write about it, so it's like you say cringe, so I'm only gonna use cringe. But there are moments that I was like, if I were to share that part of my sex life with my family and friends, like,
yeah, I mean,
how did your
reaction is, but
have you shared any of this with like family yet?
No, I mean, the book's out, like people are reading it.
Okay.
So like, you know what? I'm an adult. They can,
yes,
they can
hell
take
yes.
it. I think they're gonna take it. Everyone.
I think they're gonna. They have.
So I'm not that worried about it, but yeah.
Okay, because I'm always curious about that. Of like, just anyone who writes about their life. In my stand-up, I write a lot about my family. And do you ever are you ever worried about how you're portraying someone and like what, like, yeah.
Yeah,
like what,
I mean, I think, like, of course is the answer. Like,
yeah.
I don't think you can like really write about somebody the way that you can't like be like, I'm going in on this person unless like you haven't seen this person in a very long time, or they're dead and you had a bad relationship with them, or like whatever. Like, of course, if somebody's like still in my life, I'm going to be very conscious of the way that I'm writing about them and what I'm sharing with them. I think that the way that I approached that in writing this book was to be as clear as possible that I was writing from my perspective and being like, this is how I read this situation, and kind of putting myself in my teenage shoes and know that, you know, and not try to, I'd not try to even present it like it's objective, because it's not. And it's like extremely subjective. It's like what if I'm writing about like, I was writing about like my college girlfriend, and like I very much was like, these were my feelings about this. Like,
and so you shared with them that they were going to be in the book.
Some people who I'm still like, anyone who I have like hung out with in the past 5 years. Yes. Yeah. That's
good advice, because people out there writing about other people, make sure you do that.
You should do that. You should. I mean, if somebody who's like still a part of it, if ultimately, I think the question that you need to ask is like, if I send this person this excerpt and they say, no, I want you to take this out, or I want you to change things, would you do it? And if the answer is no, then don't send it to them, and like, I don't think that you can, it's a fine line between being, accurately representing a person and like, I don't know. I lost my train of thought there, but
well, just like accurately represent, but what you're saying is like, it is so from your point of view that like, and you are, I have to say again and again, like just so generous with everyone that you're describing. And it's like, it's coming from such a genuine and kind place. And it really is coming like of your own sort of introspective of like being a closeted queer teen, which it's so refreshing to read, because I feel like for teens of our generation, it was such a siloed experience.
Yeah.
Like I did not know any other queer teens of my friend group.
No one was, like many of my friends from high school are now out, but
everyone on my soccer team is.
Yeah, you played soccer. Okay.
Yes.
Then it's done. But no, it's so funny. Like I have so many friends from high school who are queer, and it was this thing of just kind of being like drawn to certain people and not necessarily knowing why, or not being able to quite name why. Yeah.
I think that's what's so fun too, is that like to read you being drawn to the same character, like TV characters and like pop culture icons that I was drawn to, that weren't necessarily like supposed, like all your Disney Channel original movie shout outs, like all that entire girl power movement. I was like, these feelings that I'm having aren't like what my friends are having in terms of girl power.
Yeah, there was such a weird, like in that Disney Channel, as I read about how like there was such a weird time of like the late 90s and 2000s where we were like post like Spice Girls, girl power. Girls can do anything. Girls can play soccer. Girls can play in the mud. Girls can be president, but they can't.
Did you have a ton? Did you have a ton of like girl power sports tees?
I don't think I did. I think I was too much of a tomboy. Like I would have had girl power, but that seemed that almost, I'm envisioning pink, I'm envisioning flowers, and I don't think that was my aesthetic at the time, I will say. I'm sorry. Fair. It sounds like
I did. I was like, Grace, could we connect on this? But that's totally
No. I'm actually putting up a wall between us right now. But no, it was like this weird thing of being very into like girls can be tomboys, and that is good. But like, and so there's all these characters, all like every Disney Channel movie has like a girl who's like surfing or skateboarding or blah, 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 blah. Like it's all these girls doing like these boyish activities, but like everyone is like also has a crush on a boy. Everyone is already like, and it's Disney, like, you know, Disney still has like barely any queer characters for kids, but which is like wild. But it is.
Oh yes, Sam just said thinking of Little Giants right now.
Oh,
yeah, like
yes.
What was her name? Soapbox? No,
pop off in the chat if you know.
Pop off in the chat. Also, but feel free to add any questions in the chat too. We're getting to that time of a Q&A moment. But it is so interesting that we all had those like, those like almost. I like to call them queer breadcrumbs. I know you like just like little queer breadcrumbs that you could totally attach yourself to, right. like Janice Ian from Mean Girls.
I know, and it being that was actually something where like going back and rewatching Mean Girls, I was planning for that. Icebox is the name.
Icebox. I said soapbox.
Really close. Going back and watching Mean Girls, I have an essay on Mean Girls in the book, and going back and watching Mean Girls, I was kind of expecting that essay to be more about Lindsay Lohan as a actor than about the movie itself. And I was obsessed with Mean Girls, right? Like I watched that was like so formative, and I think it was mostly formative, like comedically, right? Like I was like, this gets me, like this gets my sense of humor. This is like just a little bit smarter than me. And like, like, how do I just like become Tina Fey? Like, I love this. And
okay, you and I share that. I was obsessed with Tina Fey.
Yeah. Well, you did the whole Second City thing. So I did.
But like, yes, this essay please keep going. Cause the essay really reckons with the fact that like, you have these heroes and they're writing these characters that are.
Yeah, Tina Fey, like it's not just that. So basically like the crux of the, for those who don't remember, the crux of the rivalry between Janice and Regina in Mean Girls is that in 8th grade, Regina started a rumor that Janice was a lesbian. And it's interesting, like going back and reading and watching that now, because it's not like, and then of course she writes Janice Ian Dyke in the third book. But and then at the end, Janice Ian is like making out with Kevin G, like she is straight. It's not presented as like, oh, it's fucked up that Regina George used a slur. Like that's not it. It's that like we are supposed to believe that like Regina just did the meanest thing you can do to somebody, which is to call them a lesbian. And like the idea that being called a lesbian is offensive is like pretty offensive to lesbians, right? And that, and so like that was what was really like, that was, I recognize that like more in retrospect. Like I think that was something that just kind of got under my bones and was more of like this like kind of sinister idea that stuck with me for a long time. And it wasn't until like going back and visiting it that I was like, whoa, this is homophobic, weird. But same with like a lot of 30 Rock. Like a
lot of 30 Rock.
I love Tina Fey. Tina Fey has a lot of jokes about lesbians that I think is weird and I don't appreciate. So it's like,
I mean, the
heroes and your heroes not loving you back. Yeah.
I know. You have this really perfect quote, which is like comedy that doesn't love you back. And we both love comedy. This book is so funny. And like so much of the comedy we grew up with really was unkind to queer folks.
Yeah. But again, you kind of have to take what you can get, right? Like, yeah.
Like, just touch on Tina Fey though. 30 Rock, really, her biggest character flaw is that she gets made fun of for looking like a lesbian all throughout her life.
She does. Like that is also the thing where it's like Tina Fey is one second. Sophie left and didn't close the part. Oh. Okay. Like that is like the like, haha, Liz looks like a lesbian. And
I know.
Interesting. Like the first season of 30 Rock is wild. But that episode where Jack sets her up with with like his lesbian friend, and then
Yes.
miscommunication, and it's supposed to be this like, haha, like Jack thought Liz was a lesbian. Like thinking, like now the Jack Donaghy that we know, like after all the seasons, it's like Jack has a lesbian friend.
Yeah, there was no.
Also, same with like the joke in season 1 about Jack having dated Beyonce. I'm like, Beyonce would not date Jack Donaghy.
No, absolutely not. Also, that lesbian was the hot district attorney from Law and Order SVU.
Yeah, and she was amazing. Like that's a great episode, but it is very like Liz gets shit on a lot. But it's also there's a lot of I could write another book on Tina Fey's where she's and again like in Mean Girls you have like Damien, right? Like you have this like really fun, great, hilarious gay character who is probably a bit of an archetype of like the gay like sidekick, whatever, but like I love Damien. And then at the same time you have the idea that Janice shouldn't go to pool parties with girls because she's lesbian, so it's
I know.
Weird thing of like being a gay guy is cool, being friends with gay guys is cool, but like queer women are like lecherous and creepy. So
I mean, I still think there is some of that hanging around.
Oh yeah. It's not
for
fun.
sure.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't know if this was true for you in high school, but being called a lesbian was the end all.
An insult. Like
a complete insult.
And same, I mean, being called gay, like, I mean, the amount that guys that I went to high school with, like, called each other and called things gay, like, in the 2000s, like, that was water, baby. It was everywhere. Like, it was not even, like, it was so common. And honestly, like, I kind of think, I don't know, but it was very common, and, like, less so for like, being called a lesbian was, like, also very bad, like, but, like, gay was like everywhere, and that was a very like shitting on people's lack of masculinity, which was obviously shitty.
I mean, in that same essay too, you talk about, and I think this is so important because growing up as Catholic as well, I think I sometimes do attribute some of the struggles with coming out to the Catholic Church, but it is letting the secular world off way too easy. And I remember
I remember I had a conversation with a friend of mine once who's straight and I went to high school with, who was like, we were just talking about going to Catholic school and like, would you have gone somewhere else if you in hindsight or whatever. And I'm still very close with a lot of people I went to high school with, so ultimately the answer is no for that reason. But she had been, and she was just like, it must have just been like so hard, like not being able to come out and, being gay at like Catholic high school. And I was like, I don't really think it would have been that different at a different school. At that time. Like, I do think like, yes, Catholicism has like a specific way of closeting people and a specific way of fucking you up, but like, it's not like everywhere else in like the mid 2000s was like this gay utopia that was just like shut down in Catholic school. And I think that with the internet and with like the more and more access that teenagers have to the world outside of their family, their church, their school, the less that you can pretend like those walls really exist. And like the more I think that Catholic schools have to be like, yeah, we do exist in this like greater cultural context.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because I was, I grew up Catholic, but went to public high school, and it was bad. There wasn't like PFLAG or anything. There was no like great gay straight alliance to be a part.
Oh, really? You didn't have a gay straight? We didn't have one, but like that was like specifically for Catholic reasons, I'm pretty sure.
We did not have a gay straight alliance at our school. I don't think I distinctly remember one day senior year, a group of students did Silence Day. Do you remember that?
Some people did that for us too, and I was like, lesbians.
I was blown away.
I was like, that's weird.
I was like, okay, dykes.
Like they were right, and they were very brave, and it is very good.
I know, they're so brave. They were
so weird.
in my like internalized homophobia, I was very much like, okay.
Yeah, right.
They were so brave.
They were great. Do we, it looks like we're final stretch. So if anyone has questions, please
feel free to pop them into the chat.
Yeah, we were going to do a little Q&A if anyone has anything in mind, or we can just keep going.
Yeah, we can keep going. I can keep talking about any of these things.
Yeah, seriously.
Maybe just, I get it. The virtual chat is an intimidating space.
It's an intimidating space, but I'm going to start calling people out individually.
To see.
Say something. No, I don't know who's here. Oh, Jack. I'm not answering that.
Okay.
Wow. What was your favorite?
2. Yeah, which was your favorite essay to write?
My favorite essay to write, I think the L word essay was very easy to write because like that was just like I was just like I have all these thoughts, like I am like that one came very naturally. I think the Banter Boys one was really fun because that was one where I was like watching a lot of those shows, like so a lot of like the OC and The Office and some Gossip Girl and stuff, and so that was very fun.
Did you rewatch the L word for this essay? Not that you need a reason to rewatch the L word, but
I think I rewatched the first like couple seasons of it, maybe. But I don't think I've done like honestly like a full series rewatch because like that's an endeavor. But I mean I have seen it all, but yeah.
I got to season 4 in the pandemic and had to tap out. It was it's a lot.
Yeah.
As you say in the book, it's a terrible show.
It's not good. And it can be, and it's like so fun. Like I watched it, like I watched like the first season in college, like when I was like going to some like terrible website. Like it was like before it was like off the air, but it was before it was
streamable.
Before it was streaming. So it was just like going to like tv.us.studio or whatever. And whatever. But it was really after, it was like once I graduated from college and was living with my friends in New York, is like my friend Devin and I just like watched all of the L word, and it was like such a fun experience like to do with someone. But like, and like that was great. But like now I'm like, I don't really want to, I don't think my girlfriend really cares that much. And so
my partner is an L word expert, like actually maybe could win a trivia. Like confident in her L word knowledge. I don't have that. Yeah. Alexis asks, will you read something? Do you feel?
Yeah, I can read something. That is my cousin Alexis.
Okay. Shout out to Alexis.
Alexis in Portland. I'm putting my glasses on like this, which is give me 1 second. I will find something. Okay. Okay, cool. This actually links in with a few things that we've talked about today. So this is from the L word essay because as we were just talking about it. Okay, so basically to this point, I'm talking about how we like the idea that every one of the millennial queer women has like either seen the L word or seen parts of the L word or has some kind of opinion on the L word. Like not everyone likes it, but we all like have engaged with it in some capacity.
100% agree.
Yeah. Okay. From that set of L word references, inside jokes form, and inside jokes are integral to intimacy. They're cliquey in the best way. Inside jokes let us harbor joy within a small group of people, bottling it up tight. When my high school friends and I said Jan says hi to each other in the hallways, we harkened back to a Labor Day weekend in Southwest Michigan, where we drove around desperate for a gas station to sell us Mike's Hard Lemonade. Keeping jokes on the inside isn't selfish. Rather, it's key to keeping them funny, to bottling the joy. Explaining inside jokes is a famously unfunny endeavor. When uttered to someone who wasn't in Michigan over Labor Day 2007, the humor is ripped from Jan Says Hi, leaving it a dry husk of a once pure joke. That joke I just made about Tina Kennard, I guess that's referencing something. The joke I just made about Tina Kennard's poncho addiction is only funny, or at least of note, if you've watched The L Word. If you haven't, I don't really care to explain it to you. When referencing jokes or books or movies, it's generally considerate to determine whether the other person's seen, read, heard, or heard it. Are you a 30 Rock person? I'll ask quickly, before making a joke about Mickey Rourke's sex girl. Some art has permeated society so deeply that you shouldn't have to ask someone to get it. You don't have to be a Star Wars fan to get someone speaking in a Yoda voice. You don't have to have seen all 40-odd seasons of Survivor to know what getting voted off the island implies. And the phenomenon of having jokes about a TV show is obviously not unique to The L Word. Sharing a common set of references and jokes and theories about a book or show or film series is the entire point of fandom. Whenever someone makes a deep cut 30 Rock reference, I perk up and feel instantly connected to them, as though watching Tina Fey's seminal sitcom 50 times over means that we are on some level the same. For queer millennial women, The L Word is our Star Wars. It's not that everyone's a fan, but it's just assumed that when talking to 30-something dyke to 30-something dyke, they'll get what the chart means. I can't count the number of internet dates I've been on where, with literally nothing in common, an oblique L Word reference, so is this place like your planet, leads to an extended conversation about our favorite and most reviled L Word characters. We joke about Bet Porter's jail cell sex with her carpenter side piece. The jokes forge connection. Connection gets muddled with intimacy, and sometimes then things get physical. It's a social lubricant. I can ask for any queer girl's take on the L Word Generation Q, and whether they've seen it or not, they'll have something to say about it. It's the lingua franca of the queer millennial girl community. There we go. That's my L Word take.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Joe's asking, when are we going to start a pat?
Another cousin coming through with the.
Okay, Joe.
Joe, we're starting the podcast.
We're starting a podcast. There really is so much we could talk about. I have, someone else asked a question in the proper, okay. Speaking of terrible shows, have you seen Riverdale? Curious what you think of the queer representation in this new generation.
So I watched the first season of Riverdale. I will say, so have you watched it?
No, I'm sorry. I'm bad at those. The new CW, the whole new CW range. I'm not into.
But basically, there's a gay character on the show. I think his name is Kevin, and he was apparently like a gay character in the Archie comics who was introduced sometime, probably in the past 10 years, I'm guessing. But my take on Riverdale doesn't really have to do with queer representation. It's more that as an Archie comics enthusiast, as a child, Riverdale has nothing to do with Archie comics, and
I know. I think that's why I don't watch it.
And it's just like clearly what the CW wanted is to make like this really fun, pulpy, ridiculous show about teenagers. Great, do that. But like they had to like drag in like the name of Archie comics and like these like kind of versions of the characters from the comics in order to like sell it, make it bigger, make it, this thing that people are like, oh yeah, I know Archie comics. Like, sure, I'll watch that. Whereas opposed to if it was a show about like kids in a place called like, if we were just called like Utica,
Which I would have watched too.
Yeah, and so I think I think that also speaks to just my frustration with like reboots and stuff, where I'm like, it's okay for us to be dissatisfied with art and entertainment from the past if we don't think that it like lived up to what it could, or we think that there was something missing. And I think that what we need to do is just make different art and make different TV and different entertainment, and not rely. It's more of the business thing of like needing the big name attached, and that's what bums me out. So
yeah, well, that leads me. We're coming to the end here. And I would like to ask, and you kind of touch on it at the end in your last essay, but what do you hope for queer representation as we move into, another decade here?
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, just going back to what I was saying is like having a bunch of gay kids on TV is not going to change the world, right? Like it is going to help like queer kids come out, and like that is really good for them. But like I'm not somebody who thinks that like TV is our way out of this mess. It's not. It is healthcare. But
True.
Yeah, but I think that what I hope is that there's just like enough diversity and enough like rich characters of all kinds of underrepresented backgrounds that people can kind of find the shows, find the characters that they latch onto. And I think even more than that, the best thing I think is when you latch onto a character who's nothing like you. And I think that that's easier to do when that person is just really, really well-rounded and really well-written. And I think that that's also just the great thing. Like, of course I want like the gay kids to have the gay characters on TV, but I also want like the straight people to have like the trans character on TV who they're like, wow, I love this person, and that makes me love these like trans people who I maybe don't know in my real life, but like when I do meet them, I will understand them a little bit more. So that's my hope, I think.
I love that so much. And I really think that that's like what your book is really about, because we have grown up with mostly very straight TV and we've enjoyed it. And like,
exactly. That's the point. I have these characters who I love, and they're not exactly like me. They don't need to be exactly like me. And that's like the point of our
entertainment.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Grace,
this was so much fun.
Also, Sam, we could keep going. I know that we have been live for.
You're welcome to keep talking, but you don't. I think you kind of, if you want to end it now, you end it on the perfect note.
Yeah, I think we'll unleash our audience to the world, to their Friday nights. But
yeah.
Podcast.
I it's Friday.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much. That was so wonderful. And as a bisexual woman who loves the OC, and was obsessed with Seth Cohen, I will never watch it the same.
Oh my God,
in the best way. Like, there's my world. So this is my Friday night. Yes.
Thank you, Kayla.
So thank you so much for being with us at BookSoup. It was such an honor to have you. If you haven't gotten copies, please click the sign or the green button to get your signed copy. I did. I can't wait to read this book, so I'm really excited. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your night and weekend.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.